Let's talk books now, and politics, and months from now. South Africans will head to the polls and again put their trust in preferred political parties to lead and govern. The question of leadership is always a hot potato, especially in recent times, as we grapple with the makeup of what our leadership should look like and feel like. Should they be young, astute, direct, forces to be reckoned with, or should it still be an ode to the past? Well, well-known politician is the current MEC for Infrastructure and Human Settlements, now an author. Lebogang Maile believes you are never too young to lead, as you can see by the title of his very first book. He goes further to say what he's penned is a call for young people to rise. He joins us in the studio to tell us more about this book and what he is hoping, especially younger South Africans, will take from it. Lebogang, thank you so much for your time, and so great to be able to talk to you outside of the ongoing day-to-day grind of running the economic hub of the African continent. So we really do appreciate it. A book. Why a book? What made you to decide this is what you wanted to put out there as an ode to what you, I think leadership should be about and what you hope it could become in South Africa?
Morning, and thanks for having me. I think it is very important that we constantly have a conversation as a nation about a whole range of issues. Anyway, we are known for that. We have always had conversations. So I thought that there's a lot of things that are not going right, and in fact there's a huge role that young people can play, and this role has been proven. In the 1940s the youth rose and things changed in the 70s, 1976, in the 80s, and I thought that though I'm no longer a youth, but having experienced an opportunity to be a young person and be given a responsibility and a role, I know what is it that young people can do. And I thought, let's rather start this conversation and look at other projects, things that can help us to mobilize young people.
Let's talk about then that experience of what you saying, that you know what it's like to be a young person in leadership and involved in activism at grassroots level. I mean, you start this book, and I must tell people that it's not going to be what you expect. When you see Lebogang Maile's name on the cover and you think, oh, this is going to be a memoir of this political life that started when you were a young teenager. But it's not that. The book is various conversations that you've had with people that whose brains you wanted to pick, and especially young people in leadership that you think will be people to watch. So it's actually a pleasant read. It's a good read.
If I have to say so
why was it important for that book to have that format?
I thought there are different perspectives and experiences, and a lot of wisdom and knowledge from a lot of South Africans. If you look at the team that we gathered, these are very knowledgeable, well-known, wise. Professor Marwala was the Vice Chancellor at UJ, is now the Vice Chancellor at the United Nations.
Yeah, indeed. So you're in conversation with Professor Marwala, you're in conversation with Professor Sydney Mufemadi, Ayaka Malitafa, who leads an organization that's important to you as well.
Ayaka, she's very young, I think about 22 years now, climate change activist. A lot of people don't know about her, but she has profound things to say. And she's a kind of young person we want to see taking responsibility and taking a lead and leading from the front at a young age. And that's why some of the proceeds of the book will go towards her initiatives.
Now let's talk about young Lebogang. You were 15 years old when you were thrust into the leadership of COSAS, and you do in the book talk about that moment where the leadership of the time came up to you and just said, what was the phrase that they said in Xhosa? There we go. And it's just like, it's time, it's ready, you're going to be in that position. You were 15 years old at the time. But a 15 back then, I'm sure you will say, is not the same as 15 right now. And yet, still the same. There's a lot of relevance. At the 15-year-old Lebogang, if they were to see where you had come from now, what do you think 15-year-old Lebogang would have said to you now about what you've learned about leadership now, and why your experience as a 15-year-old put in that very political position at a young age is important to inculcate the same values for leadership in current 15-year-olds?
Obviously, I was a bit wet behind the ears at the time, very radical.
A boy from Alex?
A boy from Alex, and maybe even angry to a certain level, and still trying to learn and understand politics and understand our society, how it's made, what are the challenges, and also not perhaps having a comprehensive appreciation of an organization and what it can do. And I think years later, I understand, and that's why for me it's important that young people must be organized, because if they work as individuals and if they are not organized and coordinated, they will not be able to achieve a lot of the things that the previous generations have achieved.
Well, you do make an interesting point repeatedly in the book, that South Africa is a relatively young country in terms of a democracy. It's also a very youthful. I think the majority of our population is under the age of 35, and yet that doesn't shine through in its leadership at the moment. If you look at our cabinet and our provincial governments and that kind of thing, the majority of the people are still in their 50s, 60s, and even their 70s, you know. How do we change those things around when it seems there's this tried and tested and preferred and very political way of doing things? Our leaders seem to want to be surrounded by older people, or do you think it's time? The time is now for young people really to be given their slot, almost like you were as a 15-year-old?
I make the point in the book about, in the chapter titled Demographic Dividends. But I want it to be understood in context, because I'm not, in no way am I saying old people must go home and not be in leadership responsibilities, because remember, they've got a lot of experience. So the point I'm making is that there must be a balance. And in fact, more and more young people must be given responsibilities, because the only way to accumulate experience, to accumulate knowledge, to accumulate skills, it's when you are given responsibilities. Because it shouldn't be assumed that you only accumulate knowledge and experience by virtue of age. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to make mistakes, you have to learn how things are done, and that's how you acquire knowledge. And the point we are raising is that give young people an opportunity while they're still young. In their 20s, there's nothing wrong to have a 25-year-old being a deputy minister, for instance, and you give them responsibilities. You have quite a few young people in parliament now, but they are sitting there in parliament in the backbench. It's fine, but give them responsibilities, even in corporate, you know. Give young people, bring them in these boards. They must know about corporate governance. They must bend their fingers, and they will know that.
But then let me come in with a more personal question that's perhaps not focused on the book too much. You have served your time. You have served in almost every portfolio at the Gauteng provincial government level. You recently contested for the top position in the Gauteng government. It didn't go the way that you would have wanted at the time.
Yeah.
If you cannot give us a diplomatic answer,
I won't.
Was that outcome frustrating for you? Do you think, look, I've put in my time, I've earned my stripes, I've learned all the lessons in all of the portfolios, I'm the right person for the job, I've done it all?
Not frustrating, because it's a democracy. We are contesting. So if the majority feels you're not the right person, you can't insist that you are. But of course, I thought I can do the job, having done so many things in my life, in the Youth League, in COSAS, in the organization. And in fact, you had a lot of people asking, no, you are still young, why don't you wait a bit? You know, so, and that's the point I'm raising. I'm still young, why can't a...
The deputy president of the country spoke at the launch of your book, and he says he sees you becoming premier sometime soon.
Well, I wouldn't comment on that. That's where I would be diplomatic. But otherwise, I think for me, I would do anything that my organization asked me to do. If they want me to be anything, I would be.
Is this what you mean by this term that you use in the book called waithood? About the ability for the limbo that young people find themselves. You've given it what you've spoken about in serving your time, earning your stripes, getting the right experience. That's probably different to what you speak about in terms of waithood. Young people stuck between having done their schooling, now they can't find a job. We're sitting with a situation in South Africa. It's almost a ticking time bomb of so many South Africans who've done the right thing. They've become educated, and all they want to do is put food on the table, or they want to thrive. They want to do better to provide for their families who sacrificed for them. So you're sitting with a large part of our population who've almost given up looking for jobs. And that's an important part of the population for our political parties to be speaking to, especially with an eye on the 2024 elections. What are some of the solutions that the conversations in this book has brought to light for you, for that limbo that so many of our young people find themselves in?
Yeah, the situation we find ourselves in as a nation, and even young people, it's complex. It's not as easy, though sometimes, especially during elections, politicians would want to create an impression that it's easy. We'll create jobs, we'll do this, we'll do that, and all that. It's not as easy as that. It's more complex, and I think there has to be an appreciation. That's why the type of leadership you have, it's a leadership that must have a appreciation of the kind of challenges we face. It's the leadership that must have knowledge of the different sectors of society, the leadership that must understand that we don't live in isolation. We are part of a global society. And what are the issues in this international space that we find ourselves? How are they impacting on us? And how can we position ourselves to at least put our interests first as a country without forgetting that we are part of a continent and international community.
And you do question that in the book, that you question whether the current leadership or sort of the older generation of leadership that we have at the moment, I won't say stuck with at the moment, the current leadership that we have perhaps aren't in the best position to take us forward into what's needed in the next century, and that 4IR is perhaps just a phrase that they've heard, but they don't have a real understanding about what that entails.
The understanding might be there because I also do not want to create an impression that leadership is homogeneous. They are the same. No, it's not the case. There are people who understand what has to be done, but as to whether collectively there is a commitment to be brave, take decisions that are unpopular, but in the interest of the people. And that's what we need more than anything else, because you look, there are policies for every sector, for every aspect, for all the problems we face. The question is, why are we not implementing them, and why are we not at least try, and then we can be accused of having came with the wrong policy or some. But in certain instances, we don't even implement some of those.
Do you think that there's a lacking of new ideas, though?
How do I put it? The question you are asking was dealt with, and is being dealt with in the book by Senior Counsel Ngogai Tobi.
Yes, and he had some very interesting views on leadership,
yes.
And what should influence us.
Yes, he deals with it, and he believes that the leadership of my party is a bit conservative, despite the fact that we've got progressive policies. But I think in the last few years, we have not been robust enough as a country, and I wouldn't necessarily say there's a lack of new ideas. I think we have not been robust enough, because the more robust we become, that's when you'll be able to get more new ideas. And sometimes it's not, as I've said, it's not just about bringing new things. It's about implementing what's there and what works. Because if you want to change things simply because you want to be seen to be relevant and coming with new things, it doesn't help. But of course, from time to time, that's why you have to pause and ask questions if we have to do things differently or not.
And do you think that if we're leading up to the very important polls next year, that young people want you to have all the answers so that they will support you? Or do you think that they're open to you at least admitting, look, we don't have all the answers, we don't have all the solutions, but we're willing to listen? What do you think is important about the type of communication, especially the ANC right now, should be having towards that very important population group, the young people of South Africa?
If you create an impression, not just to young people, even to the whole society, that you've got answers to all the problems, and that it's simple, you'll solve all their problems, there will be that expectation. And that's why earlier on I said leadership must have an appreciation of the kind of problems we face and how we can resolve them. And not assume and create an impression that they can solve those on their own. Admit that you need society to help you, because to be in leadership, it doesn't mean that you possess all the wisdom and all the knowledge. You are just there. It's a privilege which should be bestowed to those who are hardworking, who are committed, who are honest, who have integrity, to facilitate these interventions and discussions in society. You've got people who might not be in leadership positions, but they are experts in different areas. If you don't give them an opportunity to express themselves and to even help you, then you will not succeed.
One final question before I let you go. Setting an example, showing people how you lead is also important for them to continue to trust you, you know. Go with us on this, give us another chance because we've shown you what we can do. If you look at a province like Gauteng, where you've held various leadership positions, the last few years have been very volatile, both at municipal council level. I mean, it's just a week doesn't go by that the Joburg Council, the Tshwane Council hasn't been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons, but also at provincial level. I mean, the councils are in the news a lot, but now too at provincial government level, there's this drama around the dissolved Gauteng Growth and Development Agency as well, and there's talk that there's politicking involved in all of that. It really doesn't set the right tone, you know, when you're trying to appeal to the electorate to continue to trust you in that position. What do you make of the current political landscape and the volatility of it?
I think sometimes we don't communicate enough. Because I sit in the Executive Council, for instance, the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, that board was not dissolved. In fact...
But that's how it's being reported.
Exactly. And you're correct. I'm not saying you're wrong. That's how it was reported. And that's why I'm saying sometimes it's how we communicate. It was not dissolved. I think it was no longer reaching quorum because, and this is a report we received in the Executive Council, because when things don't go right, we have to ask what is wrong? Why is this not happening that way and all that? Because we must take a collective responsibility. And it was explained to us that no, the board was not dissolved. In fact, the MEC did write a letter to the board members because she was concerned about a whole range of things and asking them, why should I not dissolve? Give me a reason. And in that process, I think more than 50% of the board members stepped aside, they resigned. And therefore, there's no quorum, there's no board. But I know they're in court, which is fine. The Executive Council has got a collective appreciation. But the truth is things are not going well in our country. And there's no need to be diplomatic, to try to be politically correct. Things are not going well. As you know, you can see there's load shedding, the economy is not doing well.
There's different mayors and speakers.
And coalitions and all that. It's just bad. And I think the leadership at the highest level has to pause and reflect on what is it that they can do differently collectively and try to also isolate issues and say, look, these are politics. We will continue to politic, but these are issues that have to do with people's lives. If indeed all of us claim to have the best interest of our people, the best interest of our country, let's work together and fix these ones without politicking. The other issues will go into elections, will tackle each other, if it was possible, but I think I'm just being idealistic.
Spoken like a true political animal. Lebogang Maile, his book is called Never Too Young to Lead. I didn't even get a chance. I wanted to ask you about you dedicating this book to the memory of your late mother, Evelyn Sophie Maile. That was important for you, wasn't it?
Yes, certainly. My mom died, I think, 3 years ago. And
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Well, thanks. And she played a huge role in our lives. I mean, she was a single parent. She was not working.
During the country's toughest time.
Exactly. So I thought it's important to pay tribute to her. And that's why in the closing remarks of the book, I do explain the role that she has played in our lives.
I'm sure she'll be very proud. The son of Evelyn Sophie Maile and his new book called Never Too Young to Lead. Fascinating discussions. The chapters are him in conversation with various, especially young South Africans, but including a couple of older professors as well, and their thoughts and his thoughts on what leadership could and should look like in South Africa.
And we also speak to DJ Oskido there.
Yes, he does. Oh, most importantly, DJ Oskido is a chapter in this book as well. Great stuff. Thank you so much for coming in to chat to us about it.